Today's story takes us into the heart of innovative leadership with Jesper Brodin, the visionary driving IKEA's global presence and sustainable future.
I've become more and more engaged in making things better, basically. Better is better than best, and the opportunity of contributing and making things a little bit better for people is what drives me in the morning.
For many, IKEA is a familiar name, a place of endless possibilities. But for Jesper Brodin, it's a canvas to paint a future where sustainability and innovation go hand in hand.
From the start, it was about entrepreneurship, but there was always some passion from him to see what we could contribute with to society.
Under Jesper's leadership, how does IKEA transcend being just a brand to become a pioneering force in sustainable business? What can Jesper teach us about driving a culture that both challenges corporate norms and fosters a future beneficial for people and the planet?
Being a good business, we actually do good business. We are at the tipping point in the world right now. Climate questions, people questions.
This is a tale of a business and a leader at the forefront of global change, making sustainability more than a buzzword, but a lived reality. Jesper's journey from his beginnings at IKEA to his current role is a testament to the power of leadership in shaping culture. Today's story is about leveraging cultural values to inspire a global community. I'm Dr. Jessica Kriegel, and this is Culture Leaders, where we decode the magic behind the masters of movements to unleash the power of culture. This is the story of Jesper Brodin, master of a movement redefining global brand culture with visionary leadership and innovative strategies.
You're listening to a Culture Partners production.
Well, thank you so much for joining us, Jesper. I am so thrilled to have you here and so thrilled to learn from you. I would love to know, the first question we always ask is, what is your personal why?
I think I'm over the years I've become more and more engaged in making things better, basically. I've learned over the years that whatever we were taught in school, that it's good, better, best, actually better is better than best. And the opportunity of contributing and making things a little bit better for people is what drives me in the morning.
Oh, that's a good one. Better is better than best. Because at best you've stopped working, right?
Exactly. I think there is no, I think it's a typical IKEA thing also that, we are good at recognizing and celebrating when we achieve something, but then we're quite good at thinking, okay, what do we do from now? How do we take things to the next level? And to be honest, I think over the years, when I started with the company many years ago, there were a lot of things that excite me, but over the years, I've learned to appreciate that the vision of IKEA is actually not an after construction or not a sideline, but actually deeply embedded into the heart of what we do. So the aspect of creating a better life for people, obviously in life at home, being IKEA, but also expanding that to our value chain and people who are engaged in what we do, and maybe a bit beyond when it comes to areas as people and planet as well.
So you mentioned making a better life for people, but what exactly is the mission statement for IKEA?
So it's the mission statement is to create a better everyday life for the many people. It was, I think it was written the first time and shared internally back in 1980, but it was sort of very early with our founder, Ingvar Kamprad, who started the company about 8 years ago. I do believe as a 16-year-old that he was actually back then. His father had to actually co-sign for the company. He was not even old enough to own a company in Sweden back then. But from the start, it was about entrepreneurship, earning money, creating success, but there was always some passion from him to see what we could contribute with to society, and a bit of depth in his own personality to want to go beyond just making the euros or dollars or Swedish kronas. So that's what we are about. We are actually today, not many people know that, but we are a foundation. So at the top of my organizations, the owner is a foundation, and the only way, so to say, our dividends can be spent is through philanthropy. So it's an interesting way of serving that purpose in many ways, through the business and through the ownership structure, actually.
Wow. I was just interviewing someone who said that their goals for each year in their business is not the ability to earn a certain amount of revenue for the company, but rather is in their ability to give, how much they can give away at the end of the year, which does require earning revenue. But there are not a lot of organizations out there that have that kind of structure. I mean, I think that is some of the tension you're seeing right now in the world around people's perception of corporate greed and leaders generally. And not a lot of people know that about IKEA. Do you feel like that makes a difference in your culture?
Absolutely. And I get reminded when you say that I need to write on my list for the next year to get better in spreading that message, because I think
Yeah.
on one hand it feels right and important, but it's also, I think, to give people a couple of more reference points on what I believe is the new and the modern way of leading companies. Let me put it that this: to earn money is an amazing way to gain resources so we can expand what we do, including then creating jobs, having positive impact on people and planet, making lives at home accessible for people and so forth. And what I try to do is to resist the myth that being a good business and doing good business would be uh, in any way controversial or in conflict with each other. But on the contrary, I think through my years in IKEA, I've discovered over and over again, through so many examples, by being a good business, we actually do good business. And when it comes down to start reflecting on that, it makes a lot of sense. But I have to admit also that we are at the tipping point in the world right now, climate questions, people questions, where it also becomes obvious that there is a short-termism in the world that I think needs to be challenged, and would also, from a corporate perspective, would be a bad idea when you think about the young generations growing up, how they choose their brands and their employers of the future.
So I was talking to a CEO offline a couple weeks ago, and they were saying that they feel just as exploited as the frontline worker. That was their quote. And I asked him what he meant, and he said, I don't have nearly as much power as the people in my company think I have. I am controlled by the investors in the business who have shareholders and expectations. And there's a lot I would love to do. I would love to invest in other areas. I would love to give more to my employees. But if I do that, I would be pushed out. And then the next person would come in and they would put the shareholder needs first. And we would be in a
Interesting.
worse position. So, what do you say to the CEO that doesn't have the kind of structure that you have, that is in, let's say, an American public company that has shareholders that they're accountable to, that loves what you're saying, but feels like they're stuck?
Good luck. No, I think now to be to be a little bit serious, I have deep respect for that. To that point, my life is much easier. Being a fund again, the shareholder of the company, if the foundation, if they put pressure on me and us to do more and faster when it comes to investing long term in the future business model, allowing us financial means to do long term investments and so forth. I can give you a side note. It just popped up in my mind now. One of the last meetings I had with our founder before he passed away, 91 years old, I asked him, sharing a coffee, a sunny summer day, and I asked him, how should we think about the future? Just a nice conversation. And he said, you should think long term, he said. I said, okay. So how long term? He said, yeah, 200 years would be good, he said. And it stays with me. And of course, those companies and if you like, the business model of the 1900s or such, where, so to say, the overemphasis on capitalism and short-term gains is, of course, I think, not the optimum model. And I would say, obviously, I'm not anti-earning money. On the contrary, I think there is a risk with short-termism. You can strive for result and push the agenda, get decisions made, action taken, but you also might avoid doing the right long-term investments. And I do believe in times of great transformation, these are the companies that are at risk of existing, right? because they might want to get the dividends rather than making bold investments in transformation. Now, tell me any industry today who is not undergoing a transformation, whether it's digital, whether it's climate, where I think people are waking up to understand that climate is not an adaptation from companies, it's a transformation of your business model. Energy, raw material, consumption, mobility, etc. And these are topics where there is no gray zone, really, I found, but it's either you're on that train, you take the risks, you take some pain of it, but you also reap the benefits of it economically. And if you're not, I think you might have some years of okay dividends. But at the end of the day, I think the same CEO might lose the job because you haven't fought enough for the long-term investment and doing what is right for the brand and for people. So again, with the deepest respect, I think we have to ask ourselves sometimes, what is the worst, to lose our jobs or lose our self-respect when we have the opportunity to do what is the right thing to do? Again, it's not easy. I love that they are open about the challenges. That's important.
There's so much deep personal work that needs to happen for any business leader to make that decision, that I'm going to not lose self-respect. Instead, I'm going to risk losing my job. I mean, how do you encourage people to do that reflection to get there? Because we are in a system that encourages us to just go, go, go.
I would like to believe that. I think I've struggled myself and do struggle still with some of the dilemmas of the times and leading as we do. I think maybe one of my, I don't know if it's a benefit, maybe in this case, is that I suffer from a bit of optimism. So I tend to put some faith in also the unknown. But there is a logic behind it, I think. If you take, for instance, the climate challenge that is, in spite of all the calamities going on in the world currently, we believe is the greatest, the most dangerous threat to humanity. And it's not a distant threat. It's happening as we speak. And the thing is, if we even park the ethical and moral topics around it, which I think should be motivation enough, if you look at any brand out there today, what we know from an IKEA perspective, we recently concluded an interview with 30,000 people in 33 markets. And I've been running this data together with Potsdam Institute and others to say this seems to be statistically correct. So we have in our markets no less than 64% of our consumers deeply engaged, deeply worried when it comes to the climate crisis. The difference between US, China, Sweden is not that big, to be honest. The difference comes when you look at age groups. And if you go down to the 30 and 25 something, it's up in the 80s and 90s, meaning that the global awareness is much larger than we thought. And if you ignore that, even from a brand or from an employer perspective, wanting the best competences, it seems to be unwise. Then the third thing, which I try to advocate for in all the opportunities I have, through or reason also, but if you look at a company like IKEA, we are a massive consumption industry, basically, from forest all the way to people's homes, and thereby mitigating the fringes of that business model doesn't take us to a 50% reduction of carbon by 2030 or yet 90% by 2050. So the only way we can do that is by transforming, consumption itself, material equations, strive for investing into renewable energy, and not a little, but a lot, and so forth. Electric vehicle transport and so forth. You have to rethink your business model to a certain extent. And the interesting thing is, as raw material prices have continued to rise, virgin material prices, every deal we strike on circularity is a good deal. Every shift we do from meat-based to plant-based food is a great business opportunity. Every investment we have done in a windmill, we have more windmills than IKEA stores today, has given us independence, energy independence, and economic benefits. And I can continue. The list is long. But to finalize that, I recognize there are some hurdles and some barriers that we need to overcome. But it's definitely a myth to think that sustainability should come with a premium. It's the opposite. If you work it right in your business model, you will be able to find economic benefits. The problem to your question is you can't do that in a quarter or 2 quarters. You can do that in a 3 to 5 year perspective, but not in a quarter. And thereby, that form of capitalism can actually be dangerous for the future profits of the company.
What CEOs do you look up to? Who's your inspiration?
Wow. I think there are so many today, luckily. To start with, a few years ago, I was in 2011, I had the opportunity to meet Paul Polman at Unilever. I remember that meeting. I don't think he remembers me, but he was on stage, and he was, I think, one of the clearest voice of that time with courage, on a listed company, actually leading from the understanding that we need to transform. So that he was definitely a big source of inspiration from clarity, but also from courage. There are many leaders within IKEA that I've admired over the years also. My former boss, Anders Dahlvig, who was the CEO when I was assistant, was the person who brought in topics like gender diversity and environmental aspects on the agenda the first time in a very modern and natural way. If I continue, I would say 6 years ago, 7 years almost ago, when I started this assignment, I took in a meeting in Davos in World Economic Forum with the WEF Climate Alliance, and I decided to not continue our engagement there. So afterwards, in a call with friends from WEF, they asked me why, and I told because there is no commitment and no agenda, so we didn't see the value of it really. And then they asked me if we would change that, would you consider to be a co-chair? And obviously, hard to say no. And if I look 6 years down the road there, back then, no commitment, no plan, and I would say very little competence, at least with myself, but I think I can speak for several CEOs. Today, that group is 129 of the biggest brands in the world. If you add up the carbon footprint, this is the size, it's like top 3 countries in the world, which is a problem, of course, on one hand. But these are CEOs who are today committed. They are competent. We understand the cockpit of climate and the impact on both business and carbon, so to say. And we are Paris committed, and we have come quite a long way also in planning. Not every problem is solved, so to say, but most of us have plans in place and are acting and delivering on it. This has taken 6 years. It's one of the fastest development I ever seen. So I can give you at least under 29 people that I look up to in that constellation.
Amazing how you opting out allowed for transformative change and such an impact in
Such a short
I was
period of
tricked.
time. Yeah.
Classically.
Okay, maybe. So here's a question. We're fascinated with culture, and I hear a lot of CEOs curious about how to maintain a uniform culture across different geographies. I don't know that that's actually a goal, or I wonder if that's the right question, because why does each geography need to be uniform in culture? And yet I look at your organization and I feel like you are the masterclass in that. How do you do that when you have nationality culture conflicting with corporate culture? Which one trumps which, and what is the right question, or what is the lesson you've learned?
It's an absolutely fascinating question. I think maybe I will never find out fully the answers and the insights around it. It's complex. But I have a couple of experiences that has been important for me. I've had the pleasure to work. My first job was actually in Karachi, Pakistan. Second job was in Indonesia. I do believe culturally the difference between Pakistan and Sweden was less than Pakistan and Indonesia, for instance. I lived and worked in China many years. I even lived and worked in the strange place called Sweden. So I've been exposed to a lot of cultures as such. But I had a moment when I first joined in Hong Kong in China back in 2008, I think it was. I met a gentleman who was running culture programs for IKEA. They were quite popular. But there was something with his proposal that made me hesitate, and I couldn't really figure out what it was. So I asked for some time to reflect. And the next day, it came to me, the insight that the program was focused on differences. And at that moment, I had the insight to say, I think we need to focus on what we have in common. And similarities between us and try to, we can laugh at and understand some of the, the surface differences that we need to maybe be educated in to decode each other and to have a deeper and faster understanding of how we communicate. But beyond that, I found through my years that we are the same. We have the same human needs. We have the same ways of reacting, the same sadness, the same grief, the same joy, and the same need of respect, independence, and so forth. So what I believe is from my leadership and also through IKEA's years, it wasn't through design at all. It was more or less, I think, lucky for us that our set of values were really coming from common sense and from grounded values from ordinary people. And they seem to resonate with people all over the world. And quite rarely we have any confrontations around those values, being quite straightforward. And the second point, which I found interesting, is that, and to be honest, when I joined IKEA back in '95, I had a bit of difficulties to, so to say, accept the values. I felt they were a little bit imposed to me that I need to change in order to fit in, which is interesting. To a certain extent, maybe culture should pinch a little bit. But then I realized that actually the values were my own and similar or same. So it worked fine. What I found is with the values is that they have become more and more modern over the years. As people are more educated, as we realize that the borders are more an illusion than a reality between people. So values such as togetherness, delegate great responsibilities to people, to serve humanity, to be part of people and planet positive, and so forth, is not that difficult. And I think even more valid in the future than in the past.
That's so interesting. That's the same insight that my dad had. He left on a 12-year motorcycle trip around the world on a motorcycle with a sidecar, and he would go to every country all over the world, and he had this very strong opinion about whether he would like a country or not before he went there. He thought he was not going to love Russia, but he was going to love Sweden. And when he got to Sweden, he loved it. When he got to Russia, he loved it because he found that in every country, people are kind, people want to help, and that we're all the same in our differentness and we're all different in our sameness. And it was a powerful lesson that he learned in
That's
getting
beautiful.
to
Has he
travel
written a
around.
book about that? That's a beautiful story.
What? I'm trying to write a book about him. He's passed away, but I want to
Okay,
write the book
you
for
should.
him because shouldn't I? I think so. And I also have about 12 years of footage from his trip. I want to make a
Wow.
documentary too.
I think
Would be a
it's
good
a
one.
super modern story to tell. To be honest, it's because again, we are, I think, belonging to a generation growing up when there was sort of a belief or a promise that things would get better. We would overcome borders and be more aligned globally and so forth. And here we are at the time when we are taught that we are very different, and obviously we're not. But I think the message of what we have in common is incredibly important these days.
And what's interesting is he was a CEO when he left. He was feeling so much pressure from
Deadlines and metrics and employees and customers and all of the expectations of him that he felt like he had enough and he hit the road. Do you ever feel like that? I mean, what are the things that challenge you the most, that push you to the brink?
Well, I have 3 teenagers at home. If you, but otherwise, no problem whatsoever. No, I think I think these last years have been incredibly challenging, and I think I speak for all of us. Pandemic, war, economic havoc, you name it, climate change. So I do believe the challenges of our time has been overwhelming for many of us. To the point, I also think I've seen a lot of leaders not manage to cope with the carrying the load of fears and uncertainty. And I've seen a lot of people rise to the challenge in a beautiful way. So we do. I think that the answer to my question is more, how do you cope with this ever-changing, dynamic environment that we're leading in? And I do believe, back to your question on values and culture, what I found interesting, Jessica, is that we'll have less of a map today. so to say. But we can have a clear compass, and that's where values help you. If you trust that, and if you apply that on your organization, as I shared with somebody today, actually, in the early stages of the pandemic, we were quite fast in responding to the situation. Just to give you, an idea, being then a fairly analog company, we had just started our online transformation, and we were not there. But we were basically having periods where most of our stores were closed. So we were confronted by a scenario of mass layoffs and deep red numbers in IKEA for the first time ever. And there were a couple of sleepless nights there, I must say. We managed to speed up everything services, everything digital, everything online, mobilizing people, both from energy and passion, but also from safety aspects, to actually land in a place that year that we only retracted by 4% in top line, which was phenomenal. I think it's the best result we have ever done. And it's funny because it's the worst. We have never before actually retracted, but it was only 4%. We managed to navigate into black numbers, which meant actually we decided to revert all the furlough opportunities that we actually decided we cannot accept money, since we actually will make a little bit of profit. Now, the thing that took us there, interesting enough, was not that I or my management group took the right decisions. And note that a lot of companies then were paralyzed because as the dynamics and the challenges and the stakes were higher, people got more afraid of doing mistakes. I think in IKEA, people were encouraged to do what was the common sense. And thereby, the whole organization took converging actions at the same time, which made us faster and more powerful. Long story short, I think it shows the power of culture in dynamic times is more important.
Oh, that's interesting. We just released some research that we did in conjunction with Stanford University that looked at which kind of culture wins the most often. And we defined winning as revenue growth because that's typically what we're seeing CEOs trying to achieve. And the culture that outperformed to the tune of 3x was an adaptive culture. The ability to be dynamic and adapt to change is the one that wins. So there's a narrative out there, though, that is so hard to achieve because people just don't care. People don't want to work anymore. They don't want to take accountability. And there's a lot of coaching we do around that. What do you buy into that narrative? Have you seen it in your own workforce? And how do you overcome that when you do see it?
Well, I haven't seen that. I wouldn't express it, at least from our experience on that note. What we see more and more is that people look for something they believe in. They look for a purpose. And if they don't see that, money is not, well, of course, people are different. There are people who will pursue different targets. But what we see is that the importance that we are true to our vision in IKEA, but also that people, not only that there is a vision somewhere, but that people feel that they are a contributor to that vision becomes more and more important. We have today, being, so to say, a retailer and a home furnishing company, we are today getting fairly advanced when it comes to digital capabilities. And the organization, I would say, and the competence level is on a very high level today. When you talk to the best talents in our organization, they all say that they choose us not necessarily for the love of Billy Bookcase, but for the opportunity to be part of a journey where it's not only about making shareholders earn money, but I can be part of something more important. I couldn't say how big share of humanity pursue that, but it's definitely a growing number, and particularly among the younger.
Yeah, you're walking into the store is an experience. I mean, you just said being part of a journey. That made me think of the journey that you go on in an IKEA store and the experience that you create for people. I mean, I remember going to IKEA as a little kid. My mom always incentivized me to go. First of all, I got to play in the ballroom, right, which was just thrilling. And then we had those pepperkaka cookies, which I absolutely loved. There's memories created in that store, unlike, I don't know, name another store. It's just a store, right? Was that always the intention from the beginning, or did that evolve over time?
I think it was like a beautiful story of evolution and entrepreneurship. And one of the things, since I work with the founder as assistant to him, I can't remember how many stores we visited. And we would easily be at the store at 5 o'clock in the morning to say hello to the truck drivers and to people working with the logistics section for goods delivering. And then we could be there until 9 o'clock in the evening. It was an absolutely, sometimes it was tiring, but it was also fascinating. And the interesting thing with his mind, which I of course could have the opportunity to observe, is that he had the capability of constantly looking for opportunities. Now, it all started back when IKEA was actually a mail order company and decided to build its first store in the small city or town of Älmhult, where IKEA started. Today, some 8,000 people, then even smaller. Can you imagine? Now, they opened the first IKEA store there. And as such, they then, in order to make it work, they, of course, had to attract people from all over Sweden. So Swedes were driving 10, 12 hours to get to the IKEA store because the prices were amazing. So what they realized to start with was people get hungry. So the IKEA food and the IKEA restaurant was quite early on an important part. Ingvar realized that you don't make fantastic business on an empty stomach. I would say it's a story of listening to customer needs and realizing opportunities along the way and trying to find a way to not go where others are, but to create uniqueness. And as such, I think what we try to deliver to is the aspect of instant gratification is not to forget it. You can basically get anything in our range the same day. You don't have to wait 8 weeks for your sofa, etc. The aspect of an experience when it comes to inspiration, solutions, the opportunity to overview an offer in a fairly simple way, and then to basically have an opportunity for food and some sort of entertainment as well is part of what I think people still appreciate with IKEA. And it's still, I think, I would say even more in an omnichannel transformation way, where a few years ago we were, of course, leaning towards the digital revolution within our own business model. But then just to discover that parallel, we need to double up our efforts to make our stores better experience, a better service quality, more inspiration, as people are slightly more difficult to flirt with when it comes to make a journey, to spend time, to travel and so forth and come to us. And thereby, I think the store experience is right now undergoing quite an interesting time of entrepreneurship as well.
What do you see your greatest impact being on the future of IKEA? What's your special touch?
Currently, I like to think about that. There are maybe 4 aware choices you can make in your leadership. One, when I look back at my first days, it was really about being a manager, manage teams, leading topics, take decisions, and so forth. Then I had the opportunity to lead change and transformation, which I think helped me to realize you can't manage transformations, but you can lead it. You can be in the forefront, you can put out the flags, you can inspire people, you can create a vision that together with people that a community believes in. You can be there on the ground at the first examples. You can cry over the fiascos and mistakes or early stages of failures and so forth. It's a different leadership. And then I come back to 2 parts that you might interest you. I think I realized over the years that leading by building culture is even more effective. It takes longer time. There could be such a thing even as bad culture, right? Which is difficult to change. But at the same time, good culture is also very resilient. So when I look for part of my leadership of building resilience, I try to be conscious about how I lead from a culture building perspective. And then it leads me to what I'm thinking is maybe, for me at least, the ultimate stage. And that's, I don't know if there's a thing like servant leadership, but come to a place where you're more interested to say, how can I not be needed in this context? How do I contribute to a movement that is not dependent on myself, my ego, my presence, and so forth? And then you start to ask yourself different questions. How you empower people, what type of structures you can put in place to make more people dare to take risks and find ways of co-creating the future together. So these are some of the topics that I'm spending a little bit of time these days as well. What I still find important, whatever, is that when there is a crisis, or when not only a crisis, but when there is a topic, move your desk to reality. Go to the stores, go to the factories, go to the distribution floor, visit the customers, spend time in the homes of customers. And by having a little bit of open ears in those environments, it's striking how fast you can come to the right conclusions without the help of consultants, reports, governance structure. And this, I find, is actually an incredibly modern way of leading. And I should probably do more of it.
So I want to ask you a question that might be a repetition of a question I asked you previously, because you just touched on something really powerful, which is it's humility, right? It's the ability to not put ego first, but rather, how can I lead this situation in such a way that I'm no longer needed? And I would argue that the archetype of a CEO, or someone who strives to be a CEO, is less likely to have that humility at the core of their personality. Is that learned, or is it, am I wrong? How do you find that, or where did it come for you? How did you develop that?
Well, I think knowing you and your work, probably you have more facts than I do, so I can only speculate, and you can correct me. But I think I see two types there. But to be honest, people who are driven by massive egos. If you look at the best companies out there and the best leaders and the most effective leaders, I don't see a lot of that. We all struggle. I struggle with my personal needs for that as well. But like we all do. But at least I have some sort of awareness to watch out for those signals within my own consciousness. But I don't. When I look at that, if I would say some sort of alpha male typical approach to how you lead, I think it's on the brink of being extinct. Intelligent people have less wish to follow that in a corporate structure, unless you have some sort of simplicity around that makes that easier. Leading in complex environment needs humility. It needs a capacity to respond to dynamics, and it definitely needs the capacity of unleashing the power of a lot of people. So again, if you build your narrative around structure, top down, and that one person will be smart enough, I think it's just incredibly limiting of any organization. So even if anyone would be that smart, who would like to work in that type of environment going forward, I would ask.
Well, I think a lot of people are seeing that. And that is why so many CEOs are investing in culture now more than ever, because the talent isn't putting up with it anymore. You're also seeing that in increased unionization in America. And I know you have a lot of experience with that. What advice would you give to CEOs who are, for the first time, maybe dealing with unionization efforts that they hadn't previously experienced? Or what is it like to be the CEO of an organization that works with unions?
Well, yeah, there are different, I think, different styles of unions out there from different countries and so forth. But I think in general, I'm a deep believer in that all systems will get smarter from feedback loops. So to say, if you have one way of leading and one approach of it, sooner or later there is a risk that you will get stupid. If you don't get feedback, if you don't build in those loops, you will. In IKEA, I think we have been since as long as I can remember, we have had fabulous instruments of giving every leader, every manager feedback from their coworkers, at least once per year. And it's a tool where we act on leaders who are not performing to support, but also eventually to say that not everybody was meant to be a leader. And if the group is not performing or experience the right environment from the leader, normally the leader is not feeling fantastic as well. So it's actually a dual, I think, benefit. The same goes for suppliers, for customer feedback loops, and so forth. So I believe feedback loops as such is great. Dialogue is important. Therefore, I think to have the courage to listen, to make yourself available, and not to hide, so to say, away from challenges and different perspective. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that you have all the answers. And then we come back to what I think you said before. If your leadership style is based on that you are the smartest because you're the CEO and that you have all the answers, you might feel a bit pressed by being exposed to other views. If you think that you will be able to respond to all of them. But I believe modern leadership is also to be accepting and being vulnerable to accept that I don't have the answer to this topic. I hear you, I understand, but I don't have the answer. And also to sometimes show up and say we have different views. It's healthy and it's normal in a situation to have that. And then have a bit of faith that over time we will be able to also resolve dilemmas. So that's at least what I try to do.
That's beautiful. So we have a couple callers who have questions for you. Before I go to that, though, I want to ask you one question. We believe that culture is experiences that shape beliefs that ultimately drive actions and then lead to results. You're looking up, so I'm going to say it again. It's experiences shaping beliefs that lead to actions and therefore get results. So what beliefs do you want people to hold about you? And what experiences do you create to develop those beliefs?
Wow, it's a very, very interesting question. I need to look up and down and sideways and all ways now. But I think I would like people to know me for my genuine intentions. And then I would almost stop there to say, so I don't think there are perfect people or perfect leaders out there, but there could be perfect intentions. And if they are clear and they are honest and they are shared, then I think you have come a long way. So I would love for people to know my intentions, and then that we are together trying to fulfill them. I would like people also to know that I truly believe that by collectively using our collective intelligence, we will be able to create smarter plans for the future.
That's beautiful. Okay, let's go to the callers. I can't wait to see what they have to ask you.
Hi, I'm Misty Marino, and I have a question for you. What are 3 things that an employee can do right now in order to positively impact the culture around them?
Well, good question. I think one thing is to try to be a good role model by being yourself, by being genuine, and when you come to work, basically continue to be yourself, the person as you are. I think also my second advice would be to have the courage to try things. This is one of the difficult things also in IKEA. I think in many companies, it's a human behavior that we are a little bit, we tend to rely on the past and on the known and be a little bit afraid of exploring the unknown. IKEA, as you asked me before also, Jessica, of course, it's been built over the years and the decades, right? It wasn't a concept that was developed in theory and suddenly we had our stores, our business model. So the importance, I would say, in particular in dynamic times, to increase the level of experimentation and failure and have the courage to fail, I think is one of the most important advice I can give to people. I would say maybe a third one, since you asked, the aspect of continue to learn. So you go to school, you graduate, you start working. I think we need to rethink learning. There is so much things happening, AI, climate, etc. If we don't master those disciplines from a knowledge base only, I think we will miss the opportunity to contribute in the future. So continue to make sure that you have the opportunity to learn and upgrade yourself.
What are your thoughts on AI? How are you thinking about that for IKEA?
Well, we are doing something interesting now. I think for me, about a year ago I started to wake up to that there was something called AI, and it was for real. And it was a funny story because coming home from 3 days of strategy work with high-end managers in IKEA, my 17-year-old son showed me ChatGPT, and in 1 minute he created a result that was embarrassingly good, I must say. So I got fascinated and interested. Now, I had the opportunity to meet some of the experts back in the World Economic Forum in Davos in January last year. And I took a decision back then that I need to educate myself, and we need to educate ourselves as leaders. So currently we're running actually a very interesting education for 500 top leaders to make sure that we understand the opportunities, the risks, and the implications in our own leadership as well. The interesting thing, I think, Jessica, with AI is that it holds such lovely opportunities, great effectiveness, quality upgrade, and all sorts of benefits. And it has such scary risks for humanity. To the point, I think it questions concepts as truth and reliability to a point that we have never experienced before. And I think it's here. So we need to kind of get acquainted with both sides of this topic. So you can't and you shouldn't be pro or against AI. But also for some of us who are a bit naive to social media, the impact of social media and other transformations, the technology transformations, it's important to engage and have a point of view. Like everything, legislation will finally catch up. Insights will catch up. But this topic has such a transformative and disruptive element to it that we cannot be too far behind the change itself, I believe. And therefore, I think make sure that you're educated and that you stay on top. Make sure that your leaders have an opportunity to be on top of this topic as well.
Well, you said that you suffer from optimism. Does that mean you're optimistic about the future of AI, or do you have hope that we're not all going to die in some crazy Armageddon robot war?
Well, what I do believe, I want to be optimist or not, I want to be critical to the aspect of information and truth. The technology as such, as it's basically set up, makes it difficult for us to know, and even more so in the future as this technology learns more, to understand the formula of creating truth, if you like. So the input you might understand, but how the output was formulated through machine is something that needs to be reflected on. And I do believe, my personal theory is to say that we need to tenfold or hundredfold critical thinking, sources, many different sources. If the impact of the information is increasing, we need to increase the level of scrutiny. And I think media, society, public service, every part of society needs to make sure that we are less naive than we maybe were in the early stages of social media, to say this is important for us. And we're going to build a society where there will be different facets of information and truth in the future, where we will construct it in a way so that there are many facets and that the totality can help and guide us forward. I'm not sure about the robots. You have to ask somebody else about that, though.
Okay, I sure will. Let's go to the next caller to see what they have.
Hi, my name is Joy Meserve, and I'm from Los Angeles, California, and founder and CEO of Leading with Joy, a leadership consulting firm. I would like to know how the methodologies that you and your team are put into practice and actually sustained over time to become habit.
I talked about our definition of culture earlier, which is the experiences that we create for each other lead to beliefs. And those beliefs are what determine our actions, and those actions get us results. I think a lot of leaders get stuck in what we call the action trap, which is they want to get a result, so they focus on something that we need to do. And then they check if they got the result. They didn't get the result. They think about something else to do, like maybe we need to implement technology, or maybe we need to restructure the company, or maybe we need to do a training. And all of those actions end up needing to be micromanaged by leaders, as opposed to coaching to the beliefs that determine what actions people take. And so what we do is we help people understand the power of beliefs in shaping culture, and we help that scale. I mean, it's actually a question I wanted to ask you about, Jesper, earlier, which is about the scale of things. I mean, you are a CEO. You talked about going into the stores, talking to workers, going to the homes of your customers. How do you scale? I mean, you can't be everywhere. There are probably thousands of employees you've never met and will never meet. How, when you have an idea or when you notice something that needs transformation, to lead that transformation, how do you get it to the leaders that are actually working with those employees day to day?
I think it's never been easier to do that work, thanks to technology as well. if you look at the opportunity we have today to connect with all our coworkers, with all our leaders, and at a quite low effort today as well, it's never, in a way, you can say, been easier to reach out there. But also, if I go back to 20 years ago, 30 years ago, with our founder, um, in all organizations, I think we are looking for, sometimes it might be that we think we look for a leader, but it's more we're looking for what brings us together. And it should be, represented by a person, an individual who represents that unifying message and force. And as such, I think it's not so much that you have to be out there and make yourself heard. There is actually a pull. There's a wish for people to be engaged and so forth. Then I do believe it is still an important aspect to travel and be present. Of course, you can't be everywhere. But if you look at from my own platform, where I try to be on all our continents, in all parts of our value chain, and I would say at least half of my job is about that, to be accessible to people, and also maybe then from a practicality point of view, make sure that you move your decision making to the reality, so you can actually be quite effective as you meet people and as you travel, as you're visiting the phenomenons of your business. Move your decision points to that reality, and you will find, I think, speed and quality in that decision making, rather than being in a boardroom, if I say it like that.
Yeah. How do you balance that with your family? You've got 3 teenagers at home. Is it hard to be away from them? I mean, is that something you struggle with?
It's a constant struggle. I think it is for everyone in work life, right? How do you create that balance? What I learned, I think early on, is also not to make myself a victim for that situation. I need to be able to be in control of my own work life, so to say. What I found is it was more the intangible parts that drove stress with me, so to say, the burden of expectations, or the wish to achieve perfection and so forth. And I learned from leaders that I've been reporting to that if I sleep 2 hours less, if I work 3 hours more, it's so little impact for IKEA, to be honest. So the constant point is rather stay fresh, stay healthy, stay fresh, stay mentally fresh, be prepared for changes and the unexpected, and make sure that you spend your time with the right things rather than the many things. That goes for any job and any, I think, title you would have in any company, right? And it's not easy. It's I try to do every 6 months. I do a calibration with myself. What goals did I achieve? What things I promised myself did I actually spend time on? I'm happy if it's 2 out of 3, to be honest. It's normally never 3 out of 3. But I try to reset myself every 6 months. And that creates, I think, a healthy opportunity to scale away some things, the clutter of work life, and at least every 6 months have some sort of focus determination. Here's the 3-4 things I'm going to really make a matter with when it comes to the next coming period.
How do you stay fresh? What do you do in your personal time?
I think to start with, I almost started to say I sleep a lot, but at least I don't I don't like to sacrifice. It happens from time to time, and with jet lags and traveling a bit. But I try to mind the basic needs, right? Good sleep, sports, nature. But most of all, when I come home, my family is incredibly unimpressed by me and my title. So it's very refreshing to come home and be part of an ordinary family, and the joy of being married, having 3 kids, and just being able to switch off. I think it's one of the things I've trained over the years, the capability to switch off. The illusion that you need to have some sort of consciousness and being responsible 24 hours a day is not healthy. I think all leaders need to find the capability to switch off, and then you rebuild yourself. And in my case, I love music. I love to play guitar, and that's my moment when I get just a little bit of time with myself. So when I travel for more than a week, I always look out for a guitar shop somewhere where I can go and play for an hour and disappoint the poor salesperson because I never buy anything when I'm traveling. So that's my way of getting a little bit of yoga.
That's amazing. Well, it has been an absolute joy to chat with you today. I'm just going to say this, whether it's the right thing to say or not. There's the voice in my head as I've been talking to you. Man, is this guy for real? You are like the CEO that they write books about. It's so inspiring to hear how you talk about leadership, how you talk about the future, the responsibility, balance, taking care of yourself, the
being genuine. I want to apply for a job now at IKEA. I mean, you're very inspirational. So I appreciate you sharing yourself. I have one last question though, and this is my favorite question, although sometimes it's hard for people to answer.
And the question is, what is one thing that you never get asked in these interviews that you wish you would be asked more often?
What a brilliant question. It is a difficult one. But first of all, thank you for this opportunity and for those kind words. I think you have asked a lot of good questions also, like going a bit on the personal level, like what is really the true motivations. I think a question could be about what are you afraid of? That would be an interesting one, or even more difficult, what's your favorite IKEA product? So, but I leave it to you to choose the questions.
I'm going to pick what are you afraid of as my final question then, because you did talk about counteracting fear. I mean, that is a big part of the work that you do. So what scares you?
Well, what scares me is at the moment is leaders who don't take a greater responsibility than the position they cover. Mm-hmm. I think all of us, in the element of so many crises going on right now, people who define their own leadership to their position, I think basically try to free themselves from a greater conscience and maybe a greater opportunity to influence. So I am, that's one of the things. When I see a CEO refer only to their business and leaving the rest to the world, so to say, there is no world, it's only us. And I do believe that in order to resolve the challenges that we have right now, we all need to step up 2-3 steps above our current position and jobs and be a bit more open and constructive to that. So that would be a fear I have. I probably have more fears as well. I need to think about that, Jessica. It's a good question.
Spiders. So you can add spiders.
And spiders as well.
Okay. Well, thank you so much. This has been so nurturing and nourishing. I love this conversation. I'm excited to see more from you and from IKEA in the future. It has been an absolute pleasure.
Thank you for the opportunity, Jessica. Thank you so much.
Thank you for tuning in to Culture Leaders. I'm Dr. Jessica Kriegel, hoping you found inspiration in today's story. If you enjoyed the episode, please leave a review and share your thoughts. And thanks for listening.
To connect and learn more about today's guest, visit the links section on this episode's show notes. Please be sure to connect with Jessica and the show at jessicakriegel.com. There, you'll be able to see all the episodes and learn more about transforming culture at your organization. This episode is a Culture Partners production. Until next time, keep shaping a positive culture. Thanks for listening.